What's going on, Illumineers, and welcome back to the Madhouse. And today we're a little mad because we're talking about SteelSong, but SteelSong is dead according to the community. According to the community, there's nowhere we can go. There's nowhere we can hide. We have Belle, which is a better Cinderella now. Red Blue is still a powerhouse. Blue, if you run SteelSong, you are a madman. But lucky for all of you, I am a madman. And there's lots of madmen out there that are running SteelSong. All right. SteelSong is still the powerhouse it has always been. The ability to do what it does is like no other. And who doesn't love running an aggro deck? Like, aggro is just fun because understand, right? If you're picking up SteelSong at this time in your Lorcana career, it is an aggro deck, okay? It is no longer as simple as it was. You can no longer show up and just run people over like you could before, but you can still run people over. There's lines you have to set up. As Chris Ayola would say, Mr. Perdita Song himself, on turn 1, I'm already thinking of my turn 4. I'm already thinking of my turn 5 because you have to prepare, and that's even more so in today's version of SteelSong because it's not as great as it was, but it's still phenomenal. And I'm here today. This video is to talk about all the different options that SteelSong has right now. There's a lot of question marks in SteelSong. Do I run Troubadour? Do I run Ursula? Do I run big shift targets? What am I doing? Am I running no shift line? Am I running shift line? Am I running aggro? Am I running diggy diggy hole? There's so many questions. And this video is just to talk about some of those different options. This isn't a deck list video today. I do have some things to talk about, and that's going to be in a later video. This video is mostly to talk about a lot of the questions we're seeing on the 20 lore page, a lot of questions I'm getting in messages, and a lot of my responses are a lot of the same, and I just wanted to get it out on video. And then maybe as I'm saying stuff, you guys respond in the comments. Find me on 20 lore, join the SteelSong thread, and share your opinions because that's how we develop things. We don't have DeCandio anymore, right? And DeCandio has kind of paved the way with these really creative things. So now it's up to all of us to kind of put our brains together and figure it out. And this is how, so I'm just putting my thoughts out there. We're going to talk about if you run item, if you run shift, no shift aggro, the big shift lines, if you run, what kind of other 5-cost singers do you run? But with that, let's jump into it, but not before we get into Disney trivia. One of my favorite parts of my videos now. I love it. I love finding the Disney trivia. But for this one, what does the drunkard in the Snuggly Duckling call Mother Gothel? This is from the movie Tangled, right? With Rapunzel, the best character in all of Lorcana. You tell me, what is the answer? Let me know in the comments now. I'll tell you the answer at the very end of the video. And also, if you have a cool Disney trivia, or even if you have any Disney trivia, put it in the comments. And if I see it, there's a good chance I'll feature it in the next one. I'll throw your name up here also, and make sure you share the answer with me as well, though, or message me or whatnot, because I want to make sure I get the right answer. All right. But what does the drunkard in the Snuggly Duckling call Mother Gothel? All right. First up, Ursula versus Troubadour. This is the biggest conversation right now. This is a massive conversation. I'll be honest, at the beginning of the set, I said you never run Troubadour. You never run the turtle over Ursula. But testing has been pretty good. Now, is the answer always run the turtle over Ursula? No. Now, what is the turtle doing? What is the Troubadour doing? Why would you even consider it? Well, he does have resist +1. And that's a big deal. He is an ally. That is a bigger deal. And let's talk about ally first. Bianca has been really good in testing right now. She's the 5/5/1 that costs 4 if you play her when you have an ally down. She's been really, really impactful in testing. That ability to trade into most things, Rapunzel target, and she can sing A Whole New World very well on turn 5. Now, the Troubadour makes that happen because he is an ally. You have to have an ally to play Bianca on 4, and you really want an ally, like you really want a 2-drop. So Smee and Troubadour are both allies now. Daisy is an ally. Nala's an ally. So there's a really good chance that you're going to see an ally between your 1 and 2 drops, and Troubadour helps with that. So that is really impactful. So as long as you're running Bianca, you probably have to run Troubadour. Not necessarily always, but it's a good option. Now, the resist +1, plays more of an impact than some people might want to admit. The resist +1 is actually a big deal, especially if traditional SteelSong or traditional blue steel comes around. Because if they play Bell on turn 1, because they always play Bell on turn 1, they can, if they TPO on turn 2, they can't banish your troubadour, right? They can't go Bell plus TPO on turn 3 into your troubadour. That's a big deal. Like if they Tinkerbell on their turn 4 or turn 5 or whatever, I think it's turn 4, they can no longer Bell plus Tinkerbell into your troubadour. That 1 damage from Tinkerbell. If you're playing against purple, they can't go, if they have a broom and a crab down, they can't trade the crab and the broom into the troubadour. Like all these things really matter. You can't go double 2-attack character into troubadour. So that resist +1 plays a big deal. The biggest thing that the resist +1 does for me though in a SteelSong and blue SteelSong meta is that troubadour can't be double Let the Storm Rage on. So if you just don't turn him sideways, then he gets to live, and that could be a big deal if you're playing something like Strength of a Raging Fire, where you just need 3 characters down, and that could be a big deal. That can be really impactful. So that resist +1 is important. So all these great things, we're saying a lot of amazing things for Troubadour. So why is Ursula even on the screen? Well, the fact of the matter is, she's already full. No, the fact of the matter is she's a great Rapunzel target, and that is everything. Wheel is a phenomenal card. Wheel wins games. Oftentimes we just don't, if we don't win if we don't see Wheel. That's not true always, but it's huge. That's what we're trying to do. Ursula, though, gives us an opportunity if we don't see a whole new world. That ability as a 1/4 to trade into things and then to have an easy Rapunzel target. Look at Blue SteelSong. They're running Belle 3/3, Smee 3/3, Calhoun 3/2. Like all these 3-attack characters that give you maximum Rapunzel value. So you can go Ursula into a Belle on turn 3 or on turn 4 and then heal with Rapunzel. So it also slows down Blue SteelSong because they know they can't afford to give you that big Rapunzel value. So now going into your turn 4, they don't turn their Smee sideways. They don't turn their Belle sideways. Like they're not turning sideways because they can't afford to give you the Rapunzel value. And that is everything. That is so big. That is so very, very big. And that is why Ursula is still a big contender right now in that 2-drop slot over Troubadour. One, Rapunzel value is everything. You guys have seen it. How many times has a SteelSong player won because they got Rapunzel value? And that is massive. You no longer have to play Wheel if you get Rapunzel value, and now you don't have to refill your opponent's hand. Right now, most lists, you're going to see the turtle in them because we're testing, is the turtle plus Bianca the way to go? Is that what we want to do? But we know Ursula works. We know how powerful and how impactful Ursula is. So that conversation's already been had. So we can test the new stuff knowing that we can fall back on things that have worked before. But it's not an easy this or that. It is not. It is 100% an incredibly difficult question to say which is better. One, the Rapunzel value. One, it's just more sticky. It's just harder to deal with. That is what has to happen. Those are the questions that are being had in this slot. Next up, ignore the Jim Hawkins. I should have cut him. That's for a different slide. We're looking at these 3 characters right here. We're looking at John Silver, Cinderella, Aerial Sonic Warrior, and this is that big shift target conversation. If you look at traditional SteelSong lists, you'll often see that they run 2 big shift targets. And in the past, in like set 4, set 5, we were running Cinderella Stout-Hearted. Set 6, a lot of people ran Aerial Sonic Warrior because of things like Diggy Diggy Hole and such. And then a couple people ran John Silver Stern Captain. Now, what's the conversation to be had right now? Well, Cinderella Stout-Hearted got a lot worse, unfortunately. I love her. I think she's a game-breaking, game-winning card when you can get her down. But your baby Cinderella, your shift target, is so easily blown up right now by all of the meta. Like almost all the meta can deal with her. We're seeing Green Yellow run Kick Cloud Kickers. We're running Blue SteelSong is running the Storm Rage on. Like The baby Cinderella is just blown up by so much stuff. So big Cinderella is just so hard to get down. It is hard to get down, and then you're stuck just with this inkable card, or you play it on 7. And a lot of her power comes from playing her on 5 and doing things that turn, or questing that turn. The other one is Aerial Sonic Warrior, which I think is going to be a lot more effective. It's your aerial will probably get blown up, right? That's probably going to happen, and it sucks. But if it doesn't, you probably just win against most decks, because now you have this character. She's a 3/8. That's a big, big butt that no one can deal with unless you're red. And like, that's it. Red is the only thing that can really deal with. You can't Crab plus Fox. You can't Belle plus Calhoun. You have to send Belle, Calhoun, and Smee to banish error. You have to do double Zeus. You have to do a Zeus and a Let the Storm, or Strength of a Raging Fire. Like, that is massive. And then for 2 ink, you're dealing 3 damage. Anytime your Let the Storm Rage down now becomes a Zeus. Like, she is so effectively strong. She's a great Rapunzel target. She does so much damage. She is a machine gun. She is the chopper gunner of Lorcana. She's so good. And I think there's a good argument to run her, because like I said, if you can get her down, you probably just win when it's such a character heavy meta right now. She's not great into red-blue, but John Silver's pretty darn good into red-blue. First off, the baby John Silver is good into red-blue to stop their challenging characters. It stops the Maui Half Shark, things like that. And then you get down, and then they kind of just ignore him. He only quests for 1. He's a 3/3. Like, we're not too worried about him. And then on turn 5, you get this John Silver Stern Captain, a 6/6/2, resist +2, and deals 1 damage to each opposing ready character. That is huge. That is massive. He trades into Maui Half Shark. He trades into Maui Hero to All. Like, and he lives, right? This guy lives. They can't even do an effective trade there. Like, that is massive. He doesn't get cleared by Fox and Crab. He doesn't get cleared. Like, you can't even use Belle, Smee, and Calhoun. They won't clear him. They'll do 1 damage each. Like, it is so effective. Then on top of that, if your opponent plays something like a Flaversham, all you have to do is Zeus it now, because it takes 1 damage at the start of their turn. So that's something as well. So just John Silver is looking really, really good this set. And he's also a captain. So that's actually something that's really important as well. The only thing that holds back John Silver is that you have to run the baby John Silver, and there's not really room for the baby John Silver right now. We've talked about how tight the 3-drop position is, and John Silver is just, I don't know if you ever run 4. Maybe you could run 3 and then 2 big John Silvers, and that's something, but I don't know if you do that either. So John Silver has the ability to be an extremely impactful card, just so strong, so just a menace to all of society. But is there room to run him? Can we run him? If you get him down, you probably just win against most decks. Like, that is crazy. That is strong. That is power right there. But can we? So these are kind of the 2 big ones, Aerial Sonic Warrior and John Silver, that need to be played with. I'll be honest, right now I'm not playing with any shift target. I did try Cinderella Stout-Hearted the other day, and that's going to be a video that comes up of a match I had, but I never played her. I only played 1, and she just never came up. So I don't know. Something to play with. These are the 2 I recommend the most giving a try, though. Moving on, we have this position, and this is the extra Singer 5 position. This has always been kind of a bigger conversation, because we had things like Naveen and we had Gaston. Right now, well, even last set, I loved Gaston. Gaston guaranteed a whole new world that you could keep in your opening hand if you had the right hand, because all you needed was 3 inkables. All you needed was 3 inkables, and you could play Gaston on turn 5 or turn 4 or turn 3, and then whole new world on turn 4. And that was really impactful. And it wasn't difficult to do either. And you kind of just win the game at that point. But Gaston is no longer as impactful as he was. He can be coiled when you're on the draw and brawled, and they also get to ramp while doing it. SteelSong can easily just Strength of a Raging Fire it, because by the But even on your turn 3, if they started Belle, if you're on the play, they're on the draw. They go Belle on turn 1. Turn 2, they go Gaston. Turn 2, they go Calhoun. Turn 3, they go literally anything. They can use Belle to sing Strength on Gaston like that. And there's nothing you can do to stop it. There's nothing you can do except watch your Gaston, your singer 5, your whole new world singer get banished. And that hurts. So that brings up other conversations, like maybe Prince Naveen needs to be brought back because Prince Naveen can't be impacted, right? Now it is an uninkable, and that's a thing that people have always hated, but he does quest for 2, and he guarantees that you get a whole new world singer. But there's more to him. He guarantees any song, right? Any song that we run, he can now sing, or he can now play. He ignores things that can't let you sing. So that is really impactful. He gets around the new Shift Pete. So that is really, really sexy. That's really good. So now maybe Prince Naveen needs to come back. We used to run 2 or 3. Then we got down to 1. A lot of people ran 0. Maybe we need to run Prince Naveen because he gives us such a great way to get back into the board. He gives us a great way to sing a whole new world, and they just can't do anything about it. Now, you can't do anything with the rest of your turn, but they have to figure out something to do as well. And meanwhile, if you have something like an Ursula, a Daisy, and an Ariel down, then they better have a really strong turn because your next turn with 8 cards is going to be really good. So next up is Miss Bianca. Miss Bianca has seen a lot of popularity. She's seen a lot of opportunity and play, and she's been really good. All right, so next up on our list is the whole item removal piece. And there's been a lot of conversation about this. People are trying to force in binges. They're trying to force in I find them Platinums. And they're just thinking we have to run item removal. We have to have a way to deal with blue steel items. We have to have a way to deal with the fact that there are more items. We have red blue items. We have red blue with just, the regular items. We have the Zan with the 50 and 0 blue steel item. And then we have just the regular tempo item or blue steel list that runs items in Flaversham. Lots and lots and lots of items in the meta. So people are trying to force in this item removal into SteelSong. Personally, I don't think it's needed. I think you're just wasting really tight positions in your deck on cards that are very rarely going to actually make an impact. When we look at these cards, I think Binja can play a part in an aggro deck. All right, as I am finishing this recording, we just saw the finals match with the Hunter Burton Memorial, and Binja almost made an impact in game 2 with purple steel versus blue steel item, the Zan list. And even though Binja came down to hit something, it still didn't matter. Like, Binja just doesn't make that great of an impact. Now, game 3, it did clear a popsicle, so that may have mattered. Probably didn't in the long run, but it's cool, okay? But the problem with Binja is that you're left with a 2/3/2. It can quest for 2. That is really good. But it gets cleared by everything. It gets cleared by Belle. It gets cleared by everything. And the fact that it gets cleared by everything and their character gets to live is just not good. That's a lot of, potential tempo loss to remove an item that might not matter. And we saw it with Freddie Rivera, right? He was at the 10Case event. He played a Binja, removed a Lucky Dime, but ultimately it didn't matter because Tamatoa just brings the item back, just brings the Lucky Dime back. This is not a hideaway. It's not a Cusco where it puts it in the inkwell. It's just item removal that goes to their discard, and then they just bring it back anyways. Blue Steel now runs... even Red Blue, I think, is running 8 Tamatoas that can bring back items. So Binja is just not doing it. The only good time to play Binja is really on your turn 3, turn 4, where it's going to make an impact. And ultimately, you're just trying to hit a workshop. Maybe you hit a popsicle, and maybe that was their only item. But if you're looking at blue steel items and they run 20 items, they're going to draw another item for their Flaversham. And what did you lose in the meantime? You could have played Ariel, you could have played Lawrence, you could have played Gaston, Aurora, like any number of other things, a 2-drop and a 1-drop. Now, when we look at it, I think it has a place in an aggro list. I think it has a place in an aggro Amber Steel list because it can come down on turn 3. You just want a curve, right? You want a curve that matters, and their 8 Tamatoas aren't going to have time to bring back all of those items. Instead of thinking about turn 10, you're really only having to think till about turn 6 or 7 when you've won at that point. So I think it can have a place in aggro, but I do not think that it has any place in regular SteelSong. Now, I find my Platinum has a little bit more of an argument because it banishes all items and it can be sung. So you get these Ursulas, you get these troubadours, these things that are only questing for 1. Well, now they have a much greater purpose. With the issue with I Find My Platinum is that this card is, you're not playing it early, right? It very rarely will ever serve a purpose early unless their Oswald just went crazy. They got a fishbone quill, or they got a workshop. Then they played a fishbone quill, and all this stuff, right? And then Oswald's triggering 2 times per turn, and they're drawing all these cards because of workshop and all of this. So early, it could serve a purpose there. Now, another benefit, and where it would probably serve better if you do run it, is later in the game. It gets to a point where Blue Steel starts looking at your board, and if Blue Steel is playing SteelSong, they know that SteelSong normally, almost always, does not have any reach. Now, there are options, right? But for the most part, there's 0 reach in SteelSong. So they can get to the point where they're setting up that 2-turn KO, that 2-turn quest to 20 game over. So if SteelSong's only questing to 18, then they can kind of just ignore them, and they can set up their turn and get ready to quest out the next turn. But if you play I Find My Platinum, when they're setting up on that first turn, you slam this down and you ruin everything. Like, you legitimately will ruin everything at that point. Because they strategized and they said, okay, with all of this, he can never reach 20. He doesn't have goat or cobra or anything, so I am good to go. I can do this, and there's nothing they can do to stop me. And then you hit him with I Find My Platinum. I don't think I would, if I was to run it, which I don't think I will. It could be a good tech option, but I would run a maximum of 2. I would never run more than that, and I think even 1 could be fine, just because we do have Wheel, and Wheel's letting us dig so well for stuff, on top of Aerial letting us dig for stuff as well. So I think I Find My Platinum could serve a purpose, but I'm sorry, Benja, I just don't think you would. But that's kind of my thoughts on item removal. If you were to run it, I just don't think we need to. I think we can go under Blue Steel fast enough, red blue fast enough, that the item removal is ultimately just not going to serve a purpose. But next up on our list, even more exciting, is shift lines, because this is a huge part of SteelSong, right? And we're seeing a lot of SteelSong not run any shift lines, and we'll talk about that here in a second. But looking at shift lines specifically, there's really one that is mostly talked about, and that's Robin Hood. And the fact of the matter is if you can get Robin Hood down on turn 1 and he lives to shift on turn 3, you've probably beat the tempo Blue Steel at that point. Like, there's really, Robin Hood coming down on your turn 3 is game, like it will win you the game against the more tempo Artabax, Kiwi version of Blue Steel. Now, it doesn't make a huge difference against the item variant, but if anything, you can set up wheels and things like that. But Robin Hood's just so good, right? It's great Rapunzel value. It replaces itself a lot of the time into a lot of different decks. It gains 2 lore when it banishes something. It's just good. Now, looking at the other ones, though, Mickey Mouse is something that I've had a lot of success with in testing so far. It's the ability to, on the play, there's nothing they can do to stop you. There's very, very, very little they can do to stop you from getting a shift Mickey Mouse down. So if you go Mickey on 1, Ursula, Troubadour, whatever on turn 2, and then shift Mickey Whole New World or Zeus or whatever you want to do, then there's nothing they can do to stop you from doing that, because that sticky Mickey having the resist +1 is just such a big deal. I've really enjoyed it. It does still get banished by Zeus, though, and it's not a great Rapunzel target. So those are things that have been a little bit worse about sticky Mickey. Queen, Unfortunately, Queen is just in a really rough spot. On the play, you could ban it. You could play Queen on 1, and then you could shift Queen on 2 and sing a Zeus and banish their bell, right? And I'm talking about, that turn 1 bell for your opponent's blue decks. But other than that, there's not a lot of opportunity, and that's 3 cards you have to make that combo work. You could still turn to Whole New World, but do you really want to? Unfortunately, I think Queen is just in a no-fly zone right now. I don't know a world where you could or want to run her because she gets banished by Bell with that 3 health. Very easy to hit with Strength of a Raging Fire. Like, she's in a really bad place right now. I don't think I could say to run her. Now, there are cool things you could do later in the game, but that would mean that your shift target shift target Queen has to live, and it probably doesn't at this point. Not where there's so much, songs running around right now. The last one is Jim Hawkins, and Jim Hawkins is an interesting one because he will most likely survive to come down. But the issue is you're already really tight on your 2-drop position with Smees, with if you run Pennies or Piglets, the Turtle or Ursula. So now you run Jim Hawkins, and Jim Hawkins is only ever going to be a 2/4. So the best that it does is clears an Oswald, right? But so that's an issue. The other issue is it's uninkable. A lot of the time when you run shift line, what you'll do is if you have one piece of the shift line, you'll mulligan or alter for the other cards in the shift line. But if you keep Jim Hawkins and you don't see the baby Jim Hawkins, now you're left with this uninkable that just feels really, really bad. And because you can so easily brick on a 5-cost uninkable. How many times have you done it with a Whole New World, right? Now, when you play this character, you may deal 1 damage to chosen character or location. That is actually kind of sexy. Your ability to blow up an Oswald, blow up a Chernobog's followers, like things like that, that is actually really unique. And that is something that is worth an idea. It's a 5/5, so that's a big reason we run Bianca, because she's a 5/5. He quests for 2. So, and it's just a shift target that will most likely live. It's just you're running a 5-cost uninkable. I don't think it's a shift target that you can actually mulligan for or you can alter for. If you have a 5-cost Jim Hawkins and no 2-cost Jim Hawkins, I don't think you can keep the 5-cost and alter to get the other, to get the baby. I don't know. I do not think he's playable just because then you're just stuck with this 5-cost uninkable that feels really bad. It is an idea. If you can get him down, then that's going to be really nice. Like that's just the fact of the matter. If you can get him down, you're in an amazing position. But he still does get banished by Zeus, so that feels really bad. But he can clear anything, he can deal a damage, he can sing Wheel and Zeus of your own. But ultimately, I think if you do run a shift package, Robin Hood is just the best. He just offers more opportunity to do things. Mickey Mouse, I would say, is second best, followed by Jim, and I don't think Queen, is even in the conversation. So, last thing we're going to talk about a little bit is shift, no shift, and aggro. And what I'm talking about here is the different builds of how you can build SteelSong. And I'm going to do I was going to include deck lists in this video, but the video is already getting pretty long. So we'll do the deck lists in an upcoming video. I have a lot of different ones to talk about how the meta has developed. But as far as this goes, I threw this in here mostly to talk about what it is and how they're different. And when I talk about shift, it is the traditional version of SteelSong. You have the 1-cost and the shift target, right? So Baby Robin Hood 2/2/1, and the shift target being the 3/6/2. And you do this for the explosiveness of it. And that's why you run shift targets. That's why people like those shift targets, because it is so explosive. And when you can get it off, there's a very big difference between the games where you see a shift and you don't see a shift. Now, when you run no shift targets, no shift reminds me a little bit more like a tempo deck, and it's still an aggro deck, right? It's still very much an aggro deck, but it's just different, right? You're playing these cards, you're trying to The most common version of no shift is, of course, going to be Wochuk's version, where he was kind of one of the first people to just remove the shift lines altogether and find a way to make it work. And he really showcased what Gaston could do back with harps, back in set 4. And then we saw Chris Iola, run the Perdidas and things like that. And there is a lot of merit there, but it does play different. You're really trying to get that shift target, whereas no shift, you're just trying to play a line. You're trying to play a curve. When you play that curve, it lets you fit in 8 different cards. So a lot of times, if you feel your list is really tight, you don't know what to cut to make room for something else, maybe you try no shift if you want to make room, because you don't have to run the 4 baby Robin Hood and the 4 big Robin Hood. Now you can run 8 of another card. So if you have played a lot of traditional, I encourage you to try no shift, but you have to understand that they do play differently. The end game is all the same. You want to get a whole new world off, okay? But you're playing it slightly different to get to that point where you play a whole new world. And once you get, so you're just trying to play a bunch of aggro, you're trying to play a whole new world to try and go a bunch of aggro again. So there might be, if I was talking to Wochuk, he might tell me that he feels no shift is more aggro than the shift line, because the shift line does have some control variance. And I think that the no shift version is probably better into red blue than the shift version, but I think the shift version is better into blue steel than the no shift version. So take your pick, right? Either one I think is fine right now. Still trying to figure out what are the best ways to make the shifts or make the builds work. But there's also this down here, this aggro line, and it's funny to say aggro when they're both aggro decks, but we're talking Diggy Diggy Hole and, of course, a version of aggro that doesn't run the mines, and they are still very much in the running. They're still very good decks. They still can win by turn 4, turn 5. The big thing that separates them is these top 2 run a whole new world, and the bottom one does not run a whole new world. Typically, they typically run Dock, and then of course you have Diggy Diggy Hole, which runs the mine, and then you have the non-aggro that doesn't run the mine, and that's kind of like the shift versus no shift argument. If you run a regular aggro version with no mine, then you can cut the mines and the happies, and you can run something else. And then, of course, there is also the aggro line that runs, that Boomy Jr. really said this is the way to run it. And that typically runs very little aerials, very little songs, and it runs a whole new world, but no docks. And they're just essentially trying to utilize one of the best cards in the game, that being a whole new world, to draw 7 cards, spam the field again, but they don't have a lot of the cards that only quest for 1. They've decided to cut those for these 2 questers that are just hard to deal with. It really try them all. If you like Amber Steel, try them all. I think aggro is in a difficult place right now because of Bell, but it just has to find a way, and there's a lot of really interesting lists out there that have found success. I'll show off a list here in a couple days that has had some changes to it that I've been running that has found to be really successful. And then of course I'll always have to mention Boomy Jr. and his no mermaid list, but those are kind of a little bit of talks. I think, like I said, I think no shift has better chance of winning against red blue than shift line, but I think shift line has a better chance of winning versus no shift. And then aggro, I think I haven't played enough of it this set to really decide where it sits best yet, but winning on turn 4, turn 5 is always pretty sexy. So ladies and gentlemen, that's everything. The Disney trivia, that's how we're going to end it. What does the drunkard and the snuggly duckling call Mother Gothel? A tall drink of water. All right, a tall drink of water. So there's your next pickup line. Ladies and gentlemen, if you need one when you go out and, be a little cray. So that's your Disney trivia. Let me know if you got it right in the comments. But that's kind of what the point of this video was. All right, I just wanted to talk about a bunch of different stuff. I wanted to talk about you know, all these different things in SteelSong, because there's a lot of conversation going on. And if you follow the 20 lore page, the SteelSong thread is where we talk about most of it, but it gets lost, right? So this is just another way to talk about all these different aspects of SteelSong and maybe give you some more things to think about right now. But I hope you enjoyed the video. All right, the next video will probably be a recap of this weekend as far as different things go, but I have a gameplay video coming up, and I also have a deck list video coming up where we talk about a bunch of different SteelSong deck lists, what's been working for me in testing, and what's been working for other people. So ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed the video. As always, stay happy and healthy, and I'll see you around.